Welcome, everyone, to episode 14 of Cliffhangers and Page Turners. We're really glad you could join us today.
Yeah, great to be here. And we're diving deep into a book that, wow, it definitely gets the heart rate up.
It really does. We're talking about Terminal Lucidity by Jo Loveday.
It's a medical thriller, and it basically throws you right into this high-stress hospital environment. You've got the PPCU, the post-anesthesia care unit, and then this controversial neurological research unit, all in the same place.
So our plan today is to walk you through the main story beats, get you familiar with the key characters, and really dig into the central mysteries and some of the ethical stuff the book brings up.
Right. Think of it as your spoiler-light guide to the core of terminal lucidity. Enough to keep you hooked, hopefully, without ruining all the surprises.
Exactly. So let's start with our main character, Ariel Savin.
Okay, yeah. Ariel. She's a nurse in the PCU at Betcham Hospital. Experienced, dedicated, you get that sense right away. Loveday does a great job showing her competence and her compassion, too.
We see that almost immediately, don't we? That incident with Robert Young's cardiac arrest really throws her skill into sharp relief. She thinks fast.
Definitely. But there's also this undercurrent with Ariel. She's got this growing unease, this real discomfort about what's happening in the neuro unit. With the brain-dead patients, she's pretty open about not liking that research project at all.
Yeah, that contrast is set up really early. She's good at her job, but her morals are already clashing with something bigger in the hospital.
And that Robert Young incident, even though she handled it well, it kind of puts her under a microscope, doesn't it?
It does, because straight after, she's clearly shaken up, insisting she did everything right with the oxygen flow meter. Yeah. She followed protocol.
But then you get the reactions from her colleagues, like Belinda, who seems, very quick to shift any potential blame.
And Jake. His reaction feels almost accusatory, right?
Yeah, definitely. So Ariel immediately feels targeted, kind of isolated. And the fact there's no camera in the recovery room, which makes sense, high-hat privacy laws, but it leaves her feeling really vulnerable, no proof.
Right. And it's around this time, while she's feeling all this pressure, that she overhears something really odd.
Oh, yeah, the stairwell conversation.
Yeah, this hushed talk about some driver whose squash is gone, and something called a canis field. Super cryptic.
Totally cryptic. And that's classic thriller stuff, right? These little bits of weirdness that make Ariel and you, the reader, think, okay, something shady is definitely going on here.
It feeds right into her existing worries about Dr. Harold Goss and his neuro research, which she has serious ethical problems with.
She calls the patients living cadavers. That phrase alone tells you exactly where she stands.
It really does. So let's talk about Harold Goss.
Okay. Dr. Goss. He's a neurosurgeon, and he's got this laser focus on, well, some pretty ambitious stuff. Brainstem regeneration, trying to restore lucidity, as he calls it.
And there's a very personal driver behind this, isn't there? His wife, Evie, is one of the patients in that unit. Brain dead.
Exactly. Which, it makes his dedication understandable on one level. I can see why he's so driven. But it also raises huge questions. Is his personal stake maybe blurring the lines, affecting his judgment, the ethics of it all? Ariel certainly thinks so, especially how the patients are just called subjects.
Yeah, that term is chilling, and the whole unit is shrouded in secrecy, right?
What?
Very controlled access.
Totally. Which just makes Ariel more suspicious. And then she has these unsettling little run-ins.
Like with Rebecca, the nurse in the neuro unit.
Yeah, Rebecca.
Yeah.
Ariel asks some questions about patient care, and Rebecca gets really evasive, and she's weirdly protective about not disturbing Mrs. Goss, Evie.
That feels like they're hiding something specific about Evie, maybe.
It definitely suggests there's more going on than just standard care. It feels like a performance, almost, and Ariel's starting to see through it.
And then there's that detail about the pupil checks being discontinued on the long-term patients.
Right. That's a really worrying detail, isn't it? It suggests, well, maybe a lack of basic monitoring, like they're not expecting any changes, or maybe they don't want to see any changes.
It raises serious questions, and then Ariel actually sees Harold and Rebecca meeting secretly.
And overhears them mention tender cargo.
Tender cargo, wow. That just screams something illicit, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It takes it beyond just questionable research and into potentially criminal territory. Very ominous.
Okay, so the plot moves to a hospital fundraiser. A bit of a change of pace.
Yeah, the social setting. And it's the first time Ariel really interacts with Harold outside the hospital corridors.
And we meet someone new here, too. Simon.
Ah, Simon, yes. Kind of an enigma. He seems really interested in Harold's work, maybe knows him already. Hard to tell initially.
He feels like an outsider, but somehow connected. Like maybe Harold's research has implications beyond just the hospital.
That's the feeling, yeah. And Ariel being Ariel, she doesn't miss much.
No, she makes that comment about Harold's research being a real hooker, which is pretty pointed.
Very pointed. And then Simon chimes in with that really unsettling praise for Harold. Something about mastering the illusion of life and death.
Ugh, yeah. That's just creepy. It hints at something really unnatural happening.
Definitely pushes the ethical boundaries right out there.
And woven into all this hospital intrigue, we get glimpses of Ariel's personal life, her relationship with Ben Guthrie.
Right. Ben, also a neurosurgeon. And interestingly, he often defends Harold, or at least gives him the benefit of the doubt.
Which must create conflict for Ariel, right?
Yeah.
The guy she's with doesn't see the danger she sees.
Exactly. It complicates things for her personally, makes her maybe second-guess herself, but also puts her relationship at risk if she keeps digging.
And then there's her father, Paul Savin. He has ALS.
Yeah, her dad's illness is a constant worry for her.
Okay.
And he's resistant to stem cell treatment, which is interesting given the context of Harold's research.
Do you think that influences how she sees Harold's work? Having that personal connection to neurological disease?
I think it has to, right? It probably makes her more sensitive to the potential false hope, maybe more skeptical of miracle cures. And her dad's caution might resonate with her own feelings about Harold going too far too fast.
Things really ramp up for Ariel when she gets temporarily assigned to the neuro unit itself.
Oh, yeah. That's when her suspicions go from, like, background noise to foreground alarm bells.
She sees Rebecca's attitude firsthand, dismissive patient care. Here's more of those weird, hushed conversations.
It confirms her fears. It's not just her imagination. Something is definitely wrong in that unit.
And then she finds that discarded document with Jake Farrow's name on it.
Right. And medical terms like synapse.
Why is Jake's name so significant there?
Well, Jake was involved in that initial incident with Robert Young back in the PCU. So finding his name linked to neurological stuff connected to Harold's research, it suddenly suggests a possible link between that first crisis and whatever's happening in the neuro unit.
Ah, okay. It widens the whole conspiracy, potentially.
Exactly. And then she talks to Jake, and he drops that bombshell about Harold claiming he's achieved full synapse in his lab.
Full synapse.
Yeah.
In those patients, that sounds impossible and terrifying.
Deeply alarming. It raises the question, what state are those patients really in? What is Harold actually doing to them?
And just when you think it can't get darker, the dogs.
Ugh, the dogs. Yeah. Ariel finds intubated dogs just dumped in a dumpster near the hospital.
That's just horrific. It takes the unethical experimentation to a whole new level.
Absolutely. It shows a complete disregard for life, beyond even the already questionable human research. And there's a black truck scene nearby, linking it back, potentially, to the hospital operations.
It paints a much bleaker picture of Harold, doesn't it?
Definitely. And all of this is happening with Hurricane Jacob barreling down.
Right. The hurricane adds so much tension.
It really does. It creates this pressure cooker environment. Ariel's worried about her dad, her relationship with Ben is strained, and she's trying to uncover this massive conspiracy before the storm hits and chaos erupts.
It feels like both a literal storm and a metaphorical one are about to break.
Perfectly put. And Ariel starts to suspect the worst, that maybe her own father was moved to the neuro unit, that Harold might have targeted him.
Which pushes her to do something really risky.
Yeah, she breaks into Harold's house.
Wow. Okay. That's a huge step. Desperate times, I guess.
Totally desperate. She's convinced something terrible is happening and she needs proof. It's incredibly dangerous.
What does she find?
Well, first, just kind of mundane stuff. Empty fridge, ice cream. It almost feels anticlimactic. Until she gets to Evie's closet and finds a small fridge packed with vials of blood, labeled in stages.
Oh, wow. That is deeply disturbing. What does she think it means?
It's unclear exactly, but it looks like systematic experimentation, something methodical and hidden.
And then the housekeeper shows up, mid-break-in.
Yeah, super close call. Ariel barely gets away.
Talk about tension.
Yeah.
Soon after, she connects with someone named Brittany, a former lab worker.
Right. And Brittany provides a crucial piece of the puzzle about Simon, the guy from the fundraiser.
What did she reveal?
She says Simon had this earlier research program using Russian oocytes for irreversible brain damage. But it got shut down.
Why?
Because the patients developed really aggressive personality changes. So it connects Simon directly to dangerous, ethically dubious research in the past and makes his interest in Harold's work seem much more sinister.
Okay, so Simon isn't just some curious bystander. He might be involved.
Seems very likely. And then things get personal for Ariel. Really personal.
The break-in at her apartment.
Yeah. Her place is tossed, her drawings are vandalized, and they steal her dog, Grace.
Oh, no. Stealing the dog is just cruel. That's pure intimidation.
Absolutely. It's a clear threat. Stop digging, or else. And to make matters worse, she and Ben have a huge fight, and he leaves. So she's feeling completely alone and under attack.
Does it make her back down?
If anything, it seems to make her more determined. She's lost too much now.
And then she gets more information from Amanda, a patient's relative.
Right. Amanda shares these horrifying observations from visiting the neuro unit after hours.
What did she see?
She mentions a smell, like burnt flesh. And she actually saw a patient being hooked up to electrodes in a battery. Tested on, basically.
Right. That's torture.
Yeah.
It confirms the absolute worst fears about what's happening there.
It's grim confirmation. And then Ariel notices something small, almost insignificant.
What's that?
A little heart-shaped pen topper on Harold's pen.
Okay.
And it's identical to one she found near the dumpster where the dogs were.
No way. The pin topper.
Yeah. Tiny detail, but it's the concrete link she needed. It ties Harold directly to the dump dogs. Solid proof of his involvement in that horror.
Wow. Okay. And around this time, she also finds out something important about Ben, medically speaking.
Right. She learns he has the gene for malignant hyperthermia, MH, which means general anesthesia is incredibly dangerous for him, could kill him.
How's that factor in?
Well, it adds another layer of vulnerability, especially with the hurricane coming and the potential for medical emergencies, and maybe explains some of his caution around standard procedures.
And then a confession comes out of the blue. From Chelsea.
Yeah, Chelsea, another nurse. She admits she accidentally switched 2 syringes, atropine, and sakinylcholine.
And that's what harmed the other patient, Carl, and got Ariel suspended.
Exactly. It was an accident, but it's the mistake that led to Ariel being blamed for negligence. So Chelsea's confession, while devastating for her, actually clears Ariel's name regarding that initial incident.
Finally. But the main danger is still Harold.
Absolutely. And Ariel tracks him down to an off-site lab.
And what does she find there?
The worst possible thing. Dogs on ventilators, including her dog, Grace.
He has Grace. So the confrontation happens there.
It does. It gets physical. Harold is desperate, ruthless. He'll do anything to protect his work. He even admits he was planning to frame Ariel for everything.
He's completely lost it.
Totally. But Ariel, somehow, she manages to escape with Grace.
Yes. But she runs out into the hurricane.
Right into the storm. And it gets worse. She falls into a canal swollen by the rain, nearly drowns.
Jeez. Talk about escaping one danger into another.
It's incredibly intense. But she survives, makes it back to the hospital, injured, desperate.
And what's the first thing she does?
She manages to warn the OR staff about Ben's MH. He might have needed surgery, and she potentially saves his life with that warning.
Wow. Even after everything. And then Jake steps up.
Yeah, Jake. Turns out he knew, or at least suspected, a lot about Harold's activities. He decides to help Ariel. Finally.
Better late than never, I guess. So they manage to stop Harold.
They do. Harold is found and apprehended in the cryogenics lab. His oocyte research, the really controversial stuff linked to Simon, it's all destroyed.
And the truth comes out. About the switched meds, Rebecca's role, the neuro unit.
All of it. Rebecca and others involved are arrested. Ariel is completely exonerated.
Thank goodness. What about her father?
He'd been moved out of the neuro unit, thankfully. He recovers and gets transferred to Miami for the proper ALS treatment he needs.
That's a relief. And Ariel and Ben.
They start talking again. Tentative reconciliation. Little bit of hope there at the end.
Wow. What a roller coaster indeed.
Yeah.
Terminal Lucidity definitely delivers on the thriller promise. Intense stuff.
Absolutely. Loveday really puts Ariel through the ringer, but she's such a compelling character to follow through all those ethical mazes and suspenseful moments.
Well, we hope this deep dive gave you a really good feel for Jo Loveday's novel. There's obviously so much more in the book itself. The relationships are complex. The medical details are fascinating.
If you enjoyed this chat and you're intrigued by Ariel's fight, we definitely recommend grabbing a copy of Terminal Lucidity. You won't regret it.
And you can find out more about the book and Jo Loveday on her website. That's joloveday.com, JOLOVEDAY.com.
Yeah, and she's on Facebook and Instagram too, so you can follow her there for updates.
And hey, if you liked listening to us unpack this story, please do us a favor like this deep dive, leave a comment, maybe share it with your book-loving friends.
And definitely subscribe, that way you won't miss our next episode.
Because next week, for episode 15, we're tackling a giant. We're diving into Stephen King's Never Flinch.
Ooh, that's going to be a good one. Chillin' stuff.
You won't want to miss it.
Yeah.
So, until then.
Happy reading.